I'm a bit of a wanderer, so can everyone see me okay? Yes. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning, and to be surrounded by people who are inspiring our communities, our young people, and our entire society. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come and talk with you this morning. And I was following you on Twitter yesterday. It sounded like you had a great day, and an even better last night. So it's always the tough gig the morning after the night before. So I hope we're all set for this morning. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey this morning, and I'm going to talk about beyond data. And you might think, well, what does that mean? Well, data is just a thing. It could be images or text or music or books or sensor technology. But beyond data is, well, what are we actually doing with it? Because data for data's sake is just that. But how do we use it to drive insight? How do we use it to drive opportunity? And I'm going to take you on a little journey, and I'm going to take you to the year 2040. So I want you to imagine it's the year 2040. What are you doing? What are you doing in your retirement? If you're still working, what does that look like? What technology do you have in your pocket or in your body? How are our children learning? Well, let's imagine that year through the eyes of Charlie. Charlie's my daughter, and she was 5 in this photograph, just going to school. And Charlie is just like every other little girl her age. She loves Disney princesses, she loves playing with her friends, she loves school, she loves going to a library. She loves playing Minecraft, sometimes while dressed up as Cinderella. And Charlie is just like her friends, but she's different than you and I, because Charlie, when she was born, her entire life, since the day she was born, has been impacted by technology. In fact, the summer she was born, the iPad had just been launched, which was very handy for breastfeeding with one hand and a swipe. And she could use that iPad before she could walk. And when she finally did learn to walk, she walked to the TV and swiped it. And looked at me. She couldn't talk, but she looked at me as if to say, that's not working. So every aspect of her life's going to be impacted, and even more so than we can even imagine. So let's imagine a day in Charlie's life in the year 2040. She'll be 30 years old then. What's her day going to look like? Well, it's very likely that she will have embedded chips in her body and sensor technology monitoring her heart rate, her blood pressure, her vitamin levels, her mineral levels, how much she's eaten, how much she's drunk. Gone will be the days of, honest doctor, I've only had 2 glasses of wine. And all of that data will be pumped to Charlie's own personal data store. And she will control who has access to it. And one entity that will help her is Jarvis. And Jarvis, that morning in the year 2040, is monitoring Charlie's sleep biorhythms from the data in her sensor technology. How she's sleeping, what her patterns are like, a REM sleep. And Jarvis will only waken Charlie when she's had sufficient sleep and optimal readiness for the day ahead. And in the background, Jarvis is moving her diary around what she's going to do. So no more alarm clocks. She doesn't need to hit the snooze button 5 times before she gets up. But every morning she will be at peak readiness for the day ahead. And as she awakes, Jarvis around her bedroom has presented holograms of information that either Charlie's asked for or that Jarvis has decided might be useful for her that morning. Might be the news, might be information about the day that she has coming up. She might be ignoring my virtual call to come to dinner on the Sunday. And then her virtual personal trainer arrives to take her through her exercises for the day. And her personal trainer will know, again, information from Charlie's sensors about what exercise she has done that week, what she's eaten, how good she's been, how hard she's been partying, and will work her accordingly that morning. And after her personal training, she goes down for breakfast, and in the background, Jarvis has been working with her 3D printing chef to print her breakfast. And that breakfast will have every mineral and nutrient and vitamin that Charlie's body is saying she needs that morning. It might still be Cocoa Pop flavoured, but it'll give her everything she needs. And then, as she's leaving her house, she'll give her house robot instructions for the day. To tidy her room, put on the washing, clean up the flat, water the plants on the windowsills. Gone will be the day of dead plants on windowsills. I think I'd like one of these right now for her. And as she leaves her house, Jarvis says, "Oh, Charlie, remember you've got that party tonight and you've not told me what you'd like to wear." And Charlie says, "Well, what are the options?" Because it's highly likely that in the year 2040, Charlie will be regularly 3D body scanned. And every item of clothing and footwear she owns will be a perfect fit. Gone will be the days of hunting the short rails for the short trousers like her mother, or putting plasters on her heels because her shoes are rubbing. And many of those items will be 3D printed. So she says to Jarvis, "Well, what are the options?" And Jarvis presents holograms of what the dresses could look like for the party. And she says, "Oh, get my friend Kate because she's coming to the party as well." And Kate appears virtually, and together, using voice and gesture control, they flick through the options for the night. And they pick a fabulous dress that she's going to look lovely in. And she says to Jarvis, "Can you get that 3D printed and ready in my hotel room for the party?" And off she goes to work. And she might get autonomous drone or vehicle to work. She might share it with friends or neighbours. She might be on her own. She might catch up on her work, plan for the day ahead. She might finally call me back and tell me whether she's coming to dinner on the Sunday. But she gets out a few blocks from her work just to get a bit of a walk in that morning. And as she's passing people in the street, her augmented reality contact lenses starts popping up information about the people she's passing. Information they would like to share. Can you imagine how interesting this is going to be in the pubs and clubs of the future? And she gets to work. And as they say in the west coast of Scotland, Charlie's stuck in at school. And today she's performing a heart replacement transplant surgery, assisted by surgical robots. And through her augmented reality contact lenses and voice, she's getting help from a surgeon on the other side of the world that has done this many times before. But the replacement heart is not from a donor. The replacement heart is a fully functional, 3D printed, exact biological match for the patient. Gone are those lengthy years of waiting for a suitable donor. Gone are those years and lifetimes of anti-rejection treatment drugs. The heart is a perfect fit. And the surgery's gone really well. The patient will make a full recovery. And then Charlie goes to the party. But the party's in London and Charlie's in Glasgow. And it starts in an hour and 10 minutes. Well, how does she get there? Well, on the Hyperloop, of course. 750 miles an hour, shot down a partial vacuum tube. Charlie's in London in 35 minutes. Our 3D printed dress is ready. Her and Kate go to the night out. She looks fabulous. She has a great day, a great evening. But the question is, all of that technology that Charlie's used through her day, have you used some of it? The more important question, have we built it? Have we designed it? Have we architected it? Have our children that are in school just now helping to prepare for this world? And that's where we all have a role to play, to enable our children to lead in the future, to design and build some of this amazing technology. Everything I spoke about there isn't from Star Wars, or Star Trek. Everything is either in test or development somewhere right now around the world. So how are we enabling our kids to imagine this future and to be the builders and architects and the creative minds behind some of this? And that's some of the amazing work that not only we do at the Datalab, the Innovation Centre programme, but also some of the work you do in the communities that you work in inspiring this next generation. And as Heather said, our mission is to help maximise the value of data for Scotland. A lot of this technology at its heart is built on understanding and leveraging data, different data sources, to build and design. And we have the really fortunate position of supporting organisations to innovate, creating new skills and talent, and building communities and events that support Scotland to help maximise the opportunity that we have going forward. I'm going to share a few of those with you. We've worked with our colleagues in the NHS, building an algorithm that will identify which patients are likely to bed block or become delayed discharge. I'm sure we all in the room have a personal experience of someone that's got stuck in hospital because the care package hadn't been set up, or the stair lift's not fitted, or for some other reason that even after they've been clinically treated, they can't get out. So can we predict which patients are likely to bed block at point of entry into hospital rather than at point of clinical discharge? And by joining some different data sets together with our colleagues at the NHS, we built an algorithm that's 97% accurate in predicting which patients are likely to be in that situation. And that allows you to build those care packages and get those patients home where they actually want to be sooner than otherwise you could. We've been working with the Beatson's Cancer Hospital on building computer vision algorithms that can help delineate tumours from healthy tissues in complex neck cancers. Not to replace radiologists and oncologists, but to support and augment their capability, to allow them to do more. We've been working with Canon Medical on building the world's first fully automated volumetric algorithm for mesothelioma cancer, which is a complex asbestos-related lung cancer. Health is a huge area. What about integrating patient-generated data from our smartwatches, our phones? We've been piloting 2 projects through the Cancer Innovation Challenge, actually capturing patient-reported experience and outcome measures through apps or through websites to integrate with clinical treatment pathways. Those pilots have gone really well, and patients feel more connected to their clinical team. There's a great video that a couple down in Ayrshire, the gentleman was going through treatment for blood cancer. And I think, I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying, they were quite elderly. And they were videoing, they were saying, if we can do it, anyone can do it. And basically, he hadn't felt very well this day. They filled in the portal, and his oncology nurse gave him a phone. And he said, suddenly we felt connected. We didn't have to wait 3 weeks for our next appointment. These are the types of technologies that can change people's lives. We've been working with a company called Emotech. They're competitors in a tough space with Amazon Alexa and Google Home. And it's around conversational AI. So actually having dialogue and interaction. And I can imagine a future where Ollie or Alexa reminds my dad, who's got Parkinson's, to take his medication. I know if he's having a bad day based on how slurred his speech is if I phone him. Well, what if his home device talks to him every day and spots patterns in his language, understands when his tone or his slurring is getting worse, and automatically contacts his care team? The possibilities are absolutely endless. Alban Housing, they're a social landlord up in Inverness, and together with a number of the innovation centres in NHS Highland, they built 15 fit homes. And those fit homes are integrated with sensor technology. And our part of the project is using that data from the sensor technology. Can we identify when the tenants have a higher probability of falling and intervene before they actually do fall and break a hip or cause other damage? Dehydration leads to an increased probability of falling. So the sensors on the tap and the kettle, are they drinking enough? Rich, rich sources of information that we can use. All the way through to projects using satellite imagery combined with weather patterns and growth data from crop yields. Can we identify and predict crop yields down to an individual field anywhere in the world by integrating these data sources? Predicting crop yield, imagine how valuable that would be for our governments, for our commodity sector to know and plan for challenges. Right now, the coronavirus, there's lots of work going on around analysis of mobile phone data, because you know from mobile phones where people are moving. We've done some work with UNICEF, who after the Ebola virus outbreak in Africa, they built algorithms that could predict exactly how it would spread by using mobile phone data in terms of where people moved. And I suggest that you and your library and your communities can be data hubs for your community. I heard yesterday about a project that Open Knowledge Foundation were working on to put sensors potentially on outside of libraries gathering air quality data, temperature data. That data could be fed into the library for analysis by school children, by the community. Communities can become empowered by having those local data hubs that are giving access. And we are just we're 1 week away from Scotland's next big festival called DataFest. Has anyone heard of DataFest? A few hands, that's great. So DataFest is Scotland's next big festival. It's all around showcasing data innovation all across the country, from Shetland and Orkney to Dumfries and Selkirk. And we totally stole the Edinburgh Festival idea. So we provide a platform and a few anchor events, and then the community run the rest. And it's called the Data Fringe programme. This year we will have over 100 events across the country. Everything from working with primary and secondary engineers on Stat Wars. And Stat Wars is a competition for school kids. Last year they were analysing movie viewing data to design the next movie hit. This year they're tackling climate change. I can't imagine any group better to think about the challenges for climate change. In years we've had travelling data art gallery buses. We've had data-inspired comedy, if you can imagine such a fun evening. We've got hackathons and debates and workshops and training. We have got data from the Leverhulme Forensics Institute on how to hack a shoe print. Last year it was ballistic data sets. We have data talent where we bus in 350 post-grad qualified data experts. They're getting jobs on the spot. Data tech, I don't go to that. I don't understand the technology, but really deep technologists. And Data Summit, which will conclude DataFest in a couple of weeks here in Edinburgh, with Tim Peake, the astronaut, Edwina Dunn from Dunnhumby, and not a term that's known, but actually they invented the Tesco Club card, to Hannah Fry, who's the BBC journalist, and many other great speakers from around the world. And they're coming to Scotland because what we're doing here is really world leading. We'll have 6,000 participants. So I would encourage you, have a look, see what's going on in your area, go in and join in. And next year, what are our libraries going to do for DataFest? That's my challenge. That's what I'm going to leave you with today. Because you are at the heart of our communities and can do so much. And one of the other things that we've just launched is the Data for Children collaborative with UNICEF. And we met with the UNICEF team in New York who talked about some of the most amazing things they're doing around the world to help our children by leveraging data. But they were struggling to do more because they couldn't get the talent in New York. We said, why don't you come and do it in Scotland? So they have. And together with some funding from Scottish Government and the Edinburgh City Region deal, we have launched the Data for Children collaborative with UNICEF, which is tackling some of our toughest challenges for our children: poverty, obesity, inclusiveness, both here in Scotland but also around the world. And we're really excited about the opportunity that will come from that. But this all sounds really easy, but it's not, because innovation is hard. Innovation is like going over that cloudy bridge. You don't know what's at the other side. You don't know if you'll get there. The alternative is the status quo, sitting in that nice, comfortable seat. It's warm, it's cosy. You know what it's like. But there's one thing certain. It's nice and cosy till someone comes and tips you right out of that seat. And that's what's happening in the world all over. Nokia, Blockbuster. You have managed to, get through the revolution of Audible and Amazon and Spotify. Yeah? So you must be innovating, but it is tough. But the challenge is, well, are we going to be the disruptors or the disrupted? Are we going to react or are we going to lead? Well, I would suggest we lead. We become the disruptors, the innovators, and challenge that status quo. And imagine a world where the Charlies have all of the opportunity that we've all been lucky enough to have. And how do we do it? And I've picked up 3 questions over the years that I've worked in the technology sector and in running parts of IBM, which I did before I came to the Datalab. And the 3 questions, leaders, and I would say you are all leaders. You might not say you are leaders of your communities. You are leaders of the services you provide to the communities and the society and the citizens that you serve. So what are the questions that good leaders ask themselves? Where are you looking to anticipate the next change? You think, how do you answer that? The answer's in your diary. Where are you spending your time? Who are you talking to? What are you reading? What are you using to challenge your thinking? These are all the things that will give you those nuggets that will then lead to be disruptors and innovators. So where are you looking to anticipate that change? Just look at where you're spending your time. But also who you're spending your time with. What's the diversity of your personal and professional stakeholder network? Who are you spending time with? If we all go around in homogenous groups that all think the same, where is the challenge coming from? So I would encourage you, spend time with people who are not like you. And by that I mean diversity of all kinds. Gender, socioeconomic, political, racial, all of the different diverse, because that challenge in thinking, if you're spending time with people who think like you, who's going to challenge you to change? And are we courageous enough to abandon practice that has made you successful in the past? Libraries, they're just books, aren't they? Really? We need to have the courage to make change. There is one thing that's certain in this world, is change. Things will change. So wouldn't we rather be leading that change and being courageous enough to leap out that plane, to make the change, to be the inspiration we want to be for our children and our society? And we can, and we are, and you are. You've demonstrated that. When I was growing up, my library was my Google, my Siri, my Alexa, my Amazon, my Spotify, my Audible. And you still are. So, I think all our dreams can come true and libraries can continue to be the heart of our communities and society if we've got the courage to pursue them. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a really good rest of the conference. Yeah, that's fine.
Gillian, thank you so much for that. It's actually totally amazing to see all the work that the Datalab's involved in. I thought I knew a little bit about the Datalab, but working with UNICEF and so on, just truly amazing. And I want a house robot. I was really struck by the story of the elderly couple.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we often think is the invisible barriers that we assume are there to do with age and digital inclusion and so on. Do you think that's improving?
I think it's certainly improving, but I'm not saying it's done. I think some of this usable technology is actually enabling inclusion. At our peril, we put people into buckets. Well, it will be the elderly that have a problem. Really? They're FaceTiming their grandkids in Australia and Canada and all over the world more than anyone else. But we have some way to go. It is certainly not fully inclusive yet. And the challenge we have with all of this technology advancements, are we going to create an even bigger divide of the haves and the have-nots? And that's a real worry. So if you can afford to buy all these sensors and put them in your body, and how do we, as a country, as a society, take advantage of these capabilities, but in a way that is inclusive? And that is a tough question.
Before I ask for a couple of questions from the floor, one of the things that's actually quite dear to my heart is STEM for girls. Mm-hmm. How do we encourage more women into technology, and do you think libraries have a role in that?
Absolutely, but can I challenge you to say STEAM and add the arts in?
Sorry.
Because actually, if you think about, let's just take AI, artificial intelligence, ethics in the humanities and the questions we need to ask won't necessarily come from our computer programmers or our AI engineers. They'll come from someone from, again, a diverse mindset. But I think libraries have got a huge part to play. I think the technology industry, if you want to call it that, and digital, I totally appreciated your anti of the word digital, because it kind of, the whole world's digital. It just is now. And I'll give you an example. One of the big four consultancy firms have dropped their digital division. It's like, it's not a thing anymore. It just is. But I think we don't inspire our kids enough to the variety. And I think industry's got a huge part to play in that. I do feel sorry for our career advisors who are getting bashed over the heads. I'm in this industry, have been for 30 years, and I can't keep up with the job opportunities. If, depending on the report you read, anywhere from 30 to 60% of our primary school kids will have a job that does not exist just now. Yeah, it doesn't even exist. It's not even fathomable. And you start to think, well, how's that? Surely that can't be. Well, whose gran was a vlogger? Whose grandpa was a search engine optimization expert? Whose uncle was an AI machine learning expert? It is already happening. So how do we inspire them? And I think it's all around that breadth of skills, the meta skills, the problem solving, the creative thinking, and showcasing lots of examples. Because otherwise there is no one that can keep up with all of this stuff. So we need to get better at providing that access and understanding of how the world's evolving and what they can use their skills for. But those meta skills are going to be really crucial. And the other thing is lifelong learning. Yeah. You know, it is very unlikely Charlie's going to have one career. She might have 4 or 5. She might have a very diverse, and she's got to be always learning. And so that is probably the number one thing we need to help teach them, that this life of yours will be very different to maybe, well, I did this at school, I was good at that subject, I went to uni and did the thing I was good at, and then I did it for the rest of my life. Sounds quite boring when you say it like that, doesn't it?
But again, it goes back to if we actually go back in history, it's how condensed change is now. And as you say, these job titles, for everybody who knows me, they know I do family history. Yes, there are certain people in the room who know I'm very boring about it. But if you go back to the 1800s, we were farmers, we were labourers and so on. Now, when you look at a census and the data that's on that with regards to somebody's occupation, it's just stunning. Yeah. And I think in 100 years' time, it'll be interesting. Obviously, we won't know, but it'll be interesting to see what people in 100 years' time think about the occupations that we have today and how it relates to how the world is for them.
Like, was the world really black and white in the olden days?
Can I open up to a couple of questions for Gillian before she heads off?
Hi, I'm from Toronto, and Google has a project in Toronto called Sidewalk Labs.
Yeah.
And they're building this digitally enabled community with all sorts of sensors to collect data in the public, on streets, in buildings and whatnot, and it's hugely controversial.
Absolutely. I've heard about it.
Yes, in terms of privacy, and who owns the data, what's Google going to do with the data in terms of commercialization. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts about privacy and data governance and all that.
Oh, you've opened a can of worms there, haven't you? This is an enormous topic, and even just this week there's huge press in the UK around facial recognition and reliability of facial recognition technology. And I remember I was in Toronto last year and read about the programme. I was in visiting Mars, the kind of innovation hub. This is a really tricky space, and that's why it's really important we get the ethicists and other people involved in asking those questions, that just because we can doesn't mean we should. And so we're working a little bit on the AI strategy for Scotland, supporting the Scottish Government. And fundamentally, it's at its heart, it's the citizen. Whatever we do, it's got to work for our citizens. Now, those debates will rage on for a long time. and there will be, well, if you've nothing to hide, what's the problem? Through to, actually, this is a huge challenge for me. In fact, there was, through facial recognition, there was someone who was charged because they turned their head away from a police van that was taking facial recognition down in England. And it's like, well, how can that be? So this is a topic that will go on and on. And so it should, actually, because we've got to ask the questions. We've got to ask the right questions. Again, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Any other questions? Yep. Sorry, can I take the lead in front?
I'm entranced by your vision. But I also kind of found it's very exciting and it's wonderful, and it kind of offers lots of kind of opportunities for like disruption and fantastic benefits. Where's the serendipity? Where's the sort of discovery values of just kind of like, you know, if everything is based on our predictive behaviours and the loss of that kind of like unexpected creative spark by just stumbling on something that is completely unexpected. And how you can't build that into, you know, predictive models or anything. You can't just like program Google to throw you in something that you weren't expecting. Well, you kind of could, but it won't necessarily have the same value.
I absolutely agree, and that vision is just to stimulate the thinking. You know, I have no idea if that might be, and it certainly is not all-encompassing. You know, how long have we been told that this technology and these phones are going to mean we can work 3 days a week and we'll be able to spend the rest of the week in the golf course or doing other things, or the beach, or reading, or, you know, we've become, you know, slaves to the phone. So it is going to be really interesting to see how, as a society, we develop and we adopt technologies that work for us and help us, and give us the freedom to be creative and do other things that are really, really important, that make us human. So there's a lot of amazing books just now on humans and AI, humans and the machines, augmented humans. It's fascinating space, and it is a bit kind of science fiction-y. And I don't know if anyone remembers the Minority Report video with Tom Cruise. Some of all that stuff they predicted, it's kind of here now. Not necessarily fully deployed, but scanning retinals, you know who you are, you're going to get the advert for the Guinness, you know, you're going to get, you know, using gesture control to move images around and data. That is here, but fundamentally there's lots of questions being asked, but what still makes us human versus an AI algorithm? And that's what we need to cling on to, I think, is that, you know, use the capability and technology when it helps us, but it is not the answer for everything.
The lady there, we'll take you as a final question.
I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated, Gillian, thank you. I read about a project, I think it was Barcelona, where they were trying to gather data from the public, and people were so reluctant. Eventually, they took it to the public library. People were very willing to share their data, for whatever, I can't remember the detail, with the public library. So I think we're uniquely placed with the trust to be able to get something quite special that Big Brother doesn't have. So it's how do we take that trust and the respect people have for us into this brave new world of data collection?
Yes, I have heard about the project actually, and you're absolutely right. I would say it's trustworthiness. You have a trustworthiness of it's more than just I trust this algorithm. It's deeper than that. And I think you have a really interesting role to play. And the whole data privacy trust thing, if you get this wrong, it can put you back years, if not decades. So in England, they were doing a project to leverage health data to generally improve treatment pathways and drug treatment, and it was called care.data, but they sent everyone a letter and it backfired massively. So we need to be really sensitive about some of these questions that we ask. I don't necessarily think the media often help. So slapped on the front page, there was a Google pilot in London, Google's got all your data. No, they don't. But that's the headline, that's what sells newspapers. Terminator's coming, it's going to take all our jobs. You're like, really? You know, if you've actually worked with robots, my goodness, they're a long way. They're pretty rudimentary. So I don't think the media help a lot. And so we've got a real challenge, and I would say you're in a really interesting position, and I've been challenging our politicians and our government. Why do we not have an ambition that Scotland becomes the most data literate country in the world? That our citizens are literate. They know how to ask the right questions. Because if they can ask the right and understand it, they will be comfortable with what they do share and what they don't. And that should be a personal choice. Why don't we have that ambition? How do we collectively get behind that as a mission, that our country is the most data literate country in the world? I'll leave you with that.
Gillian, thank you so much. Thank you.